Thank you, folks, for joining us today for our Future of Multicloud event. My name is Doug Berscak. I'm an enterprise sales leader here at Looker Google Cloud. I'll be your host and moderator for today's presentation. With me today, I have Marco Petruccelli. He's a former VP of Cloud Adoption and Product and Program Management Cloud Services at McKesson. And I have Jesse Sherb, who is a lead customer engineer for the Looker Cloud Cost Management Solution. We'll walk through the impacts of employing a multi-cloud strategy at your organization and hone in on a key problem that has been popping up for a lot of enterprises, which is basically how to optimize and consolidate your organization's cloud spend. We're just about to start, but I wanted to go over a few of the housekeeping items before we get started. We're going to have a 15-minute Q&A session at the end of our presentation, but feel free to send the questions in during the presentation as well. To ask questions to our presenters, please type your question in the Q&A box and then just click send. On the group chat, it's enabled in the event. Please locate the group chat icon at the bottom toolbar menu of your screen, maximize it, and participate in the conversation. You can also submit questions there as well. This presentation is being recorded, and we will be sending out the recording after it's over. The windows you see on your screen are fully customizable, meaning you can minimize them, maximize them, move them around the screen as well. And if you accidentally minimize or close the window for any reason, don't worry. Just click on the toolbar menu at the bottom of your screen, and it'll bring it back up. And with that, let's get started. Marco, you're back from vacation. How was it?
It's always entertaining on vacation. It's nice to take some time off, that's for sure.
Yeah, good to see you again. Thanks. Hey, so today we're talking about multi-cloud and one of the downstream problems that arises, right? That's the ability to optimize and manage it. So as the title is here, it's like multi-cloud is here to stay. You know, what are your thoughts about that as a practitioner in the space?
As you mentioned, it's definitely here to stay in a sense that whether companies know it or not, they're probably in it today, right? When companies think of multi-cloud, by default, the definition varies, but in general, they think, okay, that means I need to have multiple public cloud providers, right? But in general, that's not really the case. And some folks don't even classify SaaS applications as a multi-cloud endeavor. So the reality of most companies today is they're already using multi-cloud environments without even knowing it. The advantages of many SaaS applications that keep popping up are making it more and more attractive for customers to select multiple clouds within their environment, and really understanding how to use it is just key. And as you said, Doug, one of the key differentiating factors is ensuring that companies understand how to govern and manage the cost aspect, which is absolutely underestimated in general more and more from what I see in the industry.
Got it. So you're categorizing SaaS as the applications, and then when you're thinking about multi-cloud, it's either infrastructure as a service or the other acronym that's out there, platform as a service, right?
I would actually categorize SaaS as a multi-cloud approach as well. So for me, multi-cloud endeavors, IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, and on-prem private infrastructure as well, right? Because you'll have that hybrid approach. So whether it be the private cloud on-prem or one of the multiple clouds, whether SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, for me, that's really where the multi-cloud scenario pops into the cloud architecture.
We got it. So here's the team on the call today for the event. Marco, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add about your background, right? We're pulling you in as that senior IT executive, a guy who's been a practitioner, is on the other side, kind of making sure to solve these problems for enterprises. I got Jesse here as the solution lead who has helped reinvigorate. Like at Looker, we've been helping customers solve this problem, but what we recognize over the past couple of years is if we deploy a more multi-cloud singular approach, we can help customers solve some problems with the technology. So was there anything you wanted to add on your intro?
No, so only that I've been within the cloud industry for about 10 years trying to figure out the same problem that we're still trying to figure out today. Started 10 years ago on the Azure side, jumped over to the Google side about 3-4 years ago, dabbled within the AWS. So I've got a pretty good understanding of, I'll say, not only the benefits, but also the challenges of what it takes to continue to dabble within all the different realms of the different clouds and the complexities of trying to merge them together, right? Again, there's great benefits, and there's also some challenges and obstacles that we as businesses need to make sure we understand before undertaking and complexifying our environment. So really, that's what I'd like to share with the group today.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so let's kind of dive into the meat of the presentation here in the event. So for the audience here, I'm going to go through and kind of state what the problem was around managing and optimizing cost and managing it to aligning it to business initiatives. I want to talk about some of the reasons why that exists, get into an example, an actual case study, drill into that a bit, and then we're going to hand it off to Jesse to kind of give a point of view on how technologically Looker can help solve some of those problems. Cool. So no secret here, right? On the left, $1 trillion plus in value being derived by moving to the cloud. That's noted, right? You'll see a lot of case studies, whether they're from McKinsey or Flexera, talking about the move to the cloud and the value that enterprises are getting, right? As you talked about it, there is, the growth towards moving to the cloud, whether it's infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. But then on the right side here, there's about 30% of that spend being wasted, or at least not accurately, I guess, reported and analyzed, right? So is the real question, is it being wasted, or are they just not able to kind of get their hands around it? And then what we've seen in the Flexera report is 80% of CIOs, and even though the cloud's now been out for quite a long time, right? You said you started dealing with Azure, I guess, 10 plus years ago. 80% of the CIOs are admitting that, they have some level of problem at, attaining the right type of business value out of those investments. So I guess, Marco, you were on the other side, but, what's really, from your perspective, driving that lack of visibility?
Multiple reasons. Just lack of awareness, lack of visibility are some of the key aspects of the challenges that we face day-to-day leveraging the cloud now. As you said, cloud is here to stay. There's essentially no turning back. And what I tell all my folks that I deal with is, essentially we've burned the bridges and there's no turning back, right? We've burned the boats, we've burned the bridges. We're just going straight at this point. There's no turning back. The challenge with that is surrounding yourself with a team that understands how to manage the environment, how to build out the environment, and how to govern the environment, right? And we traditionally, in pre-cloud, we used to think, all right, purchase a server, install it, and you're done. And we used to forget about security. We used to bolt it on at the end. Now it's fairly different. From a security aspect, it's great news that it really is being thought up front. So that's great. But the whole cost management piece, it feels like it's the lost child that keeps getting forgotten instead of sort of our security friends. So our security friends are now upfront with us, but we've forgotten about cost management. So when I see here 30% wasted cloud spend, I'm actually surprised it's not even higher, because generally what I see within the industry is, customers are continuing to go ahead and build out within their cloud environments, whether it be 1, 2, 3 different clouds, which is fine. But again, very, very difficult to really understand the spend, understand how to manage that, govern that, implement the right tools. And there's not a lot of talk in the industry yet about making, how critical that is. So it's essentially a large piece of the pie that's overlooked. And once the spend starts skyrocketing, then people start asking questions and start sort of pedaling backwards on how do we figure out how to properly manage this. So that's really where that 80% fall in. Really, CIOs like myself, sometimes we want to move things forward, initiatives, so we go ahead and build out very quickly, but forget about the potential impacts if we don't do it right.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I thought about Tesla coming on board with electric cars, right? They're great ideas. You could charge it at your house, but infrastructure wise, right? You can't go down the highway and just get filled up pretty quick, right? So good point, right? Yeah, the downstream effect of adopting new technology. Yeah, so stepping into this other slide, the key thing here is, the top initiative that we're seeing from this Flexera report is the CIOs are trying to gain a hold of the amount of money, because I mean, we're seeing agreements to move to the cloud environment in the tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So there's a lot of money at stake. And then to be able to accurately map that to a business initiative or, just get ahead of some of the things. So I guess from your point of view, as you think about, like, you've developed budget cycles and you've dealt with kind of, IT budgets versus business unit allocations. And, I'm sure you've been in those meetings where, you got the budget and what the business is trying to do. So can you kind of talk about, some of the issues or impacts or the importance of those types of meetings?
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say it's very, very different than it was in the past, right? I think cloud really changed the dynamic where prior, I would say every business unit really ran their own budgets and managed their own budgets, which was fine. Introduced cloud, and now instead of every business unit having their own contracts with the different cloud providers or with the different providers in general, now customers or companies are trying to essentially pool their costs and purchase, one, I'll say, enterprise agreement, and then divvy up the cost and recharge as needed. But again, in theory, very, very practical, very clear. In practice, it's a different story, right? If you don't have the right skill set, if you don't have the right tool set, it is a little challenging to make sure that, you're, number one, understanding the costs, number two, understanding the reports that are coming in from your cloud providers. They're not as, I'll say, clear as folks would actually expect. I mean, it's generally its own type of language, I'll say, whether it be coming from Google, AWS, or GCP, or sorry, Azure. I mean, the costs coming in are pretty intense. So you'll have to, companies basically need to build a practice and the skill set. And generally, it's not sort of the cloud engineer or the cloud architect that's going to go off and do it on the side while they're building out the environment. Generally, I mean, the experience that I've had, since I've been doing this, I started off, I'll say, like most people, just going ahead and building out my environment and forget about cloud costs. And then once we had some spikes, we really looked into this and tried to figure out how should we be doing this. We actually spent some time in Seattle in Microsoft's offices and asked them, how are you managing this? And that's where they introduced us literally 9 years ago around, well, here's the dashboards that every business is accountable for, and here's the tools that we're using, and so on and so forth. I mean, that propelled me specifically to build, actually, like, literally the week after, I went out and posted for a cloud analytics role focused on cloud governance, right, dashboarding, visualization, and really making sense of the gibberish that none of us understood. Once that happened, we started getting, again, full visibility real time of what's actually being charged and the optimizations and so forth. And that radically changed the way we governed our environments and essentially started saving a lot of dollars. So, I mean, that's essentially how we've essentially tried to tackle this challenge. And it's really important for companies to think about this from the start, because it's not like you can catch up the dollars that you've lost, right? Now that the model's flipped from CapEx to OpEx, once you've lost those dollars, you've lost them. Right, so it's really important to get up front with this and make sure you're as organized and governing your dollars day to day instead of month to month.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, so I was going to pull Jesse in here because you said quite a few things. I think, Jesse, right, you've been interacting with a lot of different customers. He's the technical lead that has been, part of this relaunch that we've been doing around this solution. So, Jesse, what are your comments or thoughts there to add on to this?
Yeah, and I'd say even prior to working on this particular solution, in working with customers, a common theme I've seen is that as their organization starts to consume, whether it be a SaaS offering, public cloud services, and the consumption of that scales, they very quickly realize the need for a management tool, right, before it essentially gets out of hand. And an additional layer of complexity on that is when the lines of business are not, who are consuming the services are not the same central team who's necessarily, in charge of those costs. And I thought Marco brought up a really good point, because a lot of these services are now consumption-based or moving to consumption-based. A lot of the times you don't realize something has gotten out of hand until it's already gotten out of hand. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, that's kind of like giving your 18-year-old daughter at college a credit card.
Exactly.
You don't know it's out of hand until after the fact. I got one of those. All right, moving on. Yeah, so you guys touched on quite a few of the key points, right? I think, Marco touched on it. The different platforms, right? Whether it's AWS, GCP, or Azure, right? There's the billing data that's coming out of them, what they call products and how they manage the different types of services are titled and named differently, right? So that adds to the problem. And then if you think about, like Jesse said, all the different, hundreds or thousands of SaaS applications that potentially live in the enterprise today, it's a complex problem, right? And it's not getting it's not going to get smaller, right? It's here to stay. The cat is out of the bag. So how do you move from just doing basic reporting and deliver insights and be more programmatic in deploying your business logic, right? Like, you want to control the cost, you want to put in some thresholds and alerting capabilities. There's got to be a better way to do that in a more programmatic way to get ahead of spend versus behind it. Yeah, good point. Marco, you already touched on this, and Jesse. So moving forward, so we went through kind of the problem, right? Multi-cloud at the high level, the downstream issue. We were honing in on multi-cloud expenditures and how to map them to initiatives. Now I wanted to step into an example and kind of unpack this case study from Sky. We're going to provide the link here. The blog is Blue Sky Thinking, how Sky is reimagining their FinOps journey. Marco talked about it earlier, right? This is not a core IT discipline, right? It requires somebody in this, there's this new role out there, FinOps or financial operations, to really drill into, managing these types of spends. The thing about Sky, quick little bio on them, 24 million customers across 6 countries. They're part of the Comcast group, 32,000 employees. Their challenge on the left here was they were reaching their annual budgeted cost around cloud spend. Now, they use all 3 public clouds. They also have VMware, and they're also managing their on-premise data center as a internal cloud environment. But they hit their budgets after only 6 months. Now that's problematic, because then you're effectively doubling the cost, right? And that's not a good spot to be in, I guess. So I'm going to go in and we're going to unpack this a bit further. I'm going to ask Marco for his feedback on each one of these key points, and then we'll be able to hand it off to Jesse for our point of view. So the first part of this, the one thing that they did was, in the case study, the guys at Sky listed out, was they engaged Google. They engaged a third party to go through this FinOps workshop to help set up kind of a 3-pronged or a 3-phased approach, was to go through the information or inform phase, go from that to optimize, and then move on to kind of operationalizing the savings, and how to push that capability out to the business owners, to the edge, so that they can gain greater control at the edge. So on this first piece, when you guys go look at this blog, this case study, they talk about the first step was developing a clear vision for cost allocation and recharge or chargeback, which required partnering closely with all the constituents, right? Finance, procurement, tax teams, right? When you think about multi-cloud and multi-location, geolocation companies that have, global operations, right? That comes into play. And to be able to understand the business logic and process that they had to effectively deploy. And basically what they were doing was they were looking to break down those barriers to implement and embed the new processes. So they had more of a process and an automated function around this, right? So Marco, tell me from your point of view, there are 2 things kind of that I wanted to drill into a bit more here. One was the importance of upfront workshops, how you have deployed and used those, and then the importance of kind of breaking down those barriers and getting the broader team involved into the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this case study is just so real. You can change Sky and pop in the places that I've worked, and it's exactly the same thing. And I'm sure very, very similar for most companies, essentially. It's great that they looked for external help, I'll say, because it's generally not something, if you don't have the internal experience and skill set, I'll say it's very difficult from on your own to just go figure this out on your own very quickly. And you have to remember, the more time you waste, the more time you're losing out on OpEx dollars that you should be saving, right? So from my experience in figuring this out, number one, again, it's not an IT thing. It's really partnering with the business to try and figure out what are the goals, what are the requirements, what does the business want to see from a day-to-day basis and a week-to-week basis. So in our scenario, yes, we're definitely working with finance, procurement, and as you said, the tax teams, because for international organizations, depending the country, things change, right? So you have to get the right people at the table, talk through the business requirements, and once you've identified those business requirements, work with your internal team and an external provider who, again, has experience setting this up for you, right? And when I say setting this up, I'm talking about, the clear dashboarding, the real-time information dashboarding that you can then provide to your business constituents to make sure that they have what they need from an application owner perspective to be able to make the right decisions, right? It's really different from 10, 15, 20 years ago where IT ran all of IT. That day is gone. Now it's really about partnership between IT and the business in so many factors, and it really is because of cloud. And you had said it earlier, Doug, the cat's out of the bag. It's not going to get easier, like you said. It's just going to get more complex. The good news is if you put in the right governance, the right structure, it'll all be under control, right? I've made my first mistake and I recuperated, but moving forward, I've now done this another 3 times with other areas and other customers or companies, and I'll say confidently that it's under control because from the beginning, once we've built out our cloud foundation, we put in the right structure and processes in place with the right governance and stakeholders to make sure we manage it up front rather than later on, right? So, to summarize here, making sure you're talking, like you said, to the right business folks, absolutely necessary. Getting it right from the start, which means including external and business folks, absolutely key to make sure your business requirements are clearly identified. And then this isn't a one-time exercise, right? This is an ongoing exercise that you need to put in a process that you're continuously reviewing what's actually coming in from a spend perspective. So you'll need those, either business logistics or cloud analytics folks to make sure that they have their eyes on the prize. You're providing the dashboards to your application owners to make sure that they feel empowered because essentially the budgets now are on the business side. So they need to understand that they're really on the hook for burning their own budgets, right? So it's again, a partnership between IT and the business. And again, visibility is absolutely key. Without it, you will not succeed in the cloud world.
Yeah, good point. So Sky, in the first 6 months, were able to get a quick win. They identified about $1.5 million worth of savings in the first 6 months. I guess from your point, what do those quick wins really mean for you as you think about it?
Yeah, when I think about that, it just tells me that they definitely didn't have this set up from the beginning, right? It was definitely a miss. But having the capability to recover and pick up those savings is absolutely, kudos to them that they did it. And I'm sure that they're going to make sure that they have the right processes in place. And in terms of, what's providing those savings, it's, the fairly, you would think, common scenarios, but again, they're overlooked, whether it be shutting down your VMs when you're not using them, i.e. at night, ensuring that you're optimizing your storage, your IaaS provisions. There's lots of different scenarios, but again, if you're trying to do that one by one in terms of without an automated tool that has actual automatic thought behind it from an ML perspective, it's going to be very difficult, right? You're not going to get anywhere close to the savings you're looking to. So you really have to, I'll say, invest upfront on some tool out there to be able to provide the visibility, optimization, and so forth. And I'm sure that's what Sky did, and the results, by all means, much more than pay for themselves.
Yeah, first year alone, they recognized about 4 million across all the public clouds just in the first year in getting some form of visibility, right? Because they're able to do it in a more centralized way. But what they started to do is now optimize it, right? That's the next step, right? They took the time, like you said, got the visibility. Now it's like, all right, now how do we drive some level of efficiency, right? And the FinOps team that they had put together was really focusing on delivering optimizations, right? That $4 million savings was across all cloud providers. One of the ways in which they did that was they were creating their own recommenders, right? Like you had said, like what are the things, and then they were using some of the Google Cloud recommenders that we provide. And the team had discovered there was quite a few areas to go drill into. Some of the key examples were like you had just touched on it. Expensive queries, storage buckets set without retention policies, VMs that were auto-scaling without auto-scaling enabled, right? But then they were able to take that capability and then push it out to the teams so that the teams were empowered to now participate in creating their own savings, right, at the business unit level, right? And this is where we were talking about how they saved that money. The Now TV business unit, they had been forecasted to overspend for the year. And just after 3 weeks of implementing the Looker solution, they had deployed and effectively used 90% of those recommendations and brought their budget spend back in line. And they actually saved more than 50%. So they took that. I guess from your point of view, can you talk to the audience about why, not only getting the quick win, but then that repeatable, how you maybe delivered on repeatable wins and how you manage the expectations internally?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's probably from my IT life, probably the easiest business case to present to the business in terms of why invest in a tool like Looker and why invest in like a small group, even starting with one individual, right? To make sure that you have some ownership and visibility here. I mean, it essentially, again, more than pays for itself. And as you said, in Sky's scenario, $4 million within the first year. Again, absolutely a huge requirement. And the challenge is, even if you fix it day one, it's not like it's fixed for good, right? You need to have eyes on the prize at all times, because even in this scenario with Sky, or with many scenarios in the multi-cloud world, you'll have multiple teams now within cloud continuously changing the environment, adding new services, adding new functions to the environment. So the environment is constantly going to be changing, which is absolutely fine. But at the same time, you need to have, again, a team ready and always looking for optimization. So making sure that, again, you have a good set of governance in place where it's a mixture of folks looking at it on a daily basis, i.e. your app owners, folks on a regular basis sort of looking at, either by week or by month, sort of high-level estimates of where we're at from a budget perspective, to make sure, again, that we're on track. And we need to be able to pivot very quickly. We need to essentially be able to pivot in real-time mode here. Again, from a legacy perspective, it's no longer let's look at our budgets every month or every year or every 6 months and make adjustments. I mean, now we're talking about the fire hose is open and we get a chance to open it and close it as we wish. And when it's not closed, we need to make sure that we understand the tap is running. So again, we need proper governance, with a FinOps team to be able to essentially manage this on a regular day-to-day basis. And without that, essentially, you're just losing out funds. So again, absolutely critical that it's being looked at and managed appropriately.
Yeah, so for some of the audience, right, they are in the same role or positions that you were in and are in. I guess, what does it mean to that? What does it mean to you personally from a career standpoint, at least at the organization, like there's a whole political capital management, like you promised this and now you're delivering on that. Can you just unpack that a bit in terms of what that means from a credibility, like what did it do for you personally as the brand, as Marco?
Yeah, no, for sure. Good point. I mean, want to or not, like you had I'll say, I think the first slide, 80% of CIOs still are not seeing the business benefits, and that we are constantly being challenged, right, from the business. I mean, I'll start with my boss is constantly asking me, And still today, why cloud, and what's the ROI, and why cloud, and what's the ROI? As technologists, if I put my technology hat, I understand it's the right way to go. If I put my business hat on, it's hard to prove. It really is for some reasons, right? And when I have a defined budget and I put my stamp on it and I say we're going to be within this budget, then it's on me, right? I'm putting my skin in the game to say we're going to deliver efficiency within budget. Now, I need to make sure I'm covering myself with the tools in place to be able to keep up with my commitments. And again, without these types of tools like Looker, personally, I don't think I'd be successful within the cloud world in terms of managing my credibility from a spend perspective. Because without visibility, there's no way, right? There's absolutely no way to keep up with understanding the costs and essentially recuperating from the lost spend, because your budget is fixed, like it or not. A lot of things have changed, but not budgets. If anything, budgets are continuing to get smaller, not bigger. The biggest comical piece that I keep hearing is, cloud. The reason you should go to cloud is because it's cheaper. Well, to be honest, I don't agree with that. There's lots of reasons why cloud is great, and there's so many good use cases, right? Which we're not going to get into now. But it does cost money, right? And if you use it inefficiently, it will burn you. So making sure for me, from a credibility perspective, I need to make sure I have the right, sorry to use the same word, but I need to make sure I'm putting in the right governance in place to be able to keep up with my commitments from a budget perspective. And this is an absolute requirement. The same way security is it's an absolute requirement in today's world. Cost governance, again, an absolute requirement in today's world for reasons that, Sky was a good example, where without that, the results are very clear, right? Absolute overspending, not on purpose, by all means, right? It's just an oversight. But oversights cost a lot of money, and they cost jobs, and they cost reputations. So when I'm thinking about my reputation and the companies that I support, I will always recommend products and groups to manage things efficiently in the scenario that we've talked about.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, Jesse, so just drafting onto that a little bit more, you've been talking to a lot of enterprises globally as you are, adding more capability to our feature set to the Looker solution here. What are you seeing and hearing around being able to enable the business, whoever the stakeholders are, right, to be able to now participate more actively? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways we can think about optimization. One is the more obvious, the tactical optimization we've mentioned here, which is this VM is being underutilized, and therefore we should go ahead and downsize that. That's an immediate cost saving we can recognize, right? But the other side of it is optimizing the efforts of each line of business. And that starts with getting all of these stakeholders on the same page. So for example, if a business unit is launching a new project, and that project's going to incur, cost across several services, that anomalous spend is something that we need to communicate to all of the stakeholders properly, right? And a central team might be able to say, hey, well, rather than, just going and consuming those services, because we know you're about to go down this road of this project, this new endeavor, let's go ahead and purchase perhaps a reserved instance to further optimize the spend you're about to incur. So I think, having a tool set that is going to allow you to just be more proactive in creating dialogue across these different stakeholders allows you to, again, optimize before you even begun to incur some of these costs.
Yeah, and that dialogue in real time is impactful, right? Because if a service spun up, it was 20,000, it could be by the time the report or bill gets out 3-4 weeks later, could be now up to 100,000, right? So being able to do it in real time makes sense.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Cool. So this is the last piece that we're going to unpack, and then we're going to hand it off to Jesse to give him his point of view. So Marco here, they talk about now embedding, right? Taking what they've learned around the visibility piece, getting the reporting down correctly, the right type of dashboards. They've already optimized it. Now they're looking into taking this third step to drive self-sufficiency. And I touched on it a little bit, right? The ability to now have their teams make real-time decisions based on those recommendations, They have worked on embedding it and leveraging now machine learning, I guess, to move into a more forecasting and predictable model. And one of the things they pointed out right here was the report at the end here. The report that used to take them weeks to run, right, is now down to just minutes, right, and almost near real time. So I guess last piece here, Marco, before we hand it off to Jesse, what are your thoughts about being able to compress timelines and, be able to deliver that type of value?
I would just say for the whole conversation that we've had, weeks is no longer an option, right? For all the reasons we've just talked about, the example you just gave, going from 20,000 to 100,000 or pick a number, right? Within weeks, that could be days, right? It really can be days, and it's just the game has changed. And at the very beginning, you talked about, if I remember, you talked about a credit card to your daughter, right? And it's crazy. And I'll give you another analogy, right? I was actually, as you know, right? I was on vacation and I was at this lodge, at the Waterslide Lodge, and the marketing guys are just brilliant. They basically put a bracelet on you and they said, go ahead and just scan the bracelet anywhere you want, and it's going to pay automatically. And for the kids, it's great, just scan everywhere and it's as if nothing, right? And it's the same thing with cloud. You've got companies now with eager technologists just wanting to deploy very quickly, usually fairly powerful systems, endless services, and the bill only comes later on at the end of the month, right? So very, very dangerous situation for companies, again, if you don't catch it up front. So the absolute need to catch it within, again, you have in the report here, catching it in minutes. And I would say, forget about minutes. It needs to be real time, right? That's really what it needs to be. And the advantage of Looker is, again, it's all built in, it's embedded, it's multi-cloud. So again, a great tool to use, and it gives you the ability to at least stand a chance, because it's giving you the information you need to make those real-time decisions. Now, it doesn't end with the tool, right? The tool is not the end-all, be-all magic wand. The business definitely needs to have the internal processes in place to be able to leverage a tool like Looker in the right fashion to make the real-time decisions as needed. So it's really, again, it's a hand-in-hand partnership. You've got the business playing a role. You've got, the cloud analytics group playing a role. You've got, an application like Looker being a requirement. And again, you have to have the skill set to make sure it's working well. And the last piece I'll end off on is, if you don't have this, chances are there's going to be misses, because, like it or not, as everyone knows, we're in a global shortage from a skill set perspective in general. And then you tack on cloud specialty. Man, if I can hire 5-10 cloud folks, please send them to me, because I don't know them. Right? It's extremely difficult these days to have, the folks with the skill set required to make proper decisions at all times. So to have a tool like this sort of to be your safeguard is absolutely, again, required, because, you need something like this with, again, real-time, AI-driven, ML-driven, to be able to take some of the effort away from folks like you and me, and just put it in front of our face and, make it that easy for us. And again, in terms of a cost perspective, it's a no-brainer, right? It's going to be paid within days. So I honestly don't see any hesitation. And I'm speaking firsthand. As soon as I went into that Microsoft office, literally 9 years ago in Seattle, and they showed me what they were doing, I turned to my team and I said, why aren't we doing this? The week after, we essentially posted and we got set up. And again, within weeks, we were all set up. So this isn't overly complex if you do it right. With the right teams, with the right partners, you can get it right very quickly. If you don't, it'll literally be the opposite, and you're going to pay for it, basically.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of pivot off to Jesse. As we saw, I've been at Looker for 6.5 years, and we've been solving this problem for customers in a very ad hoc way, very, opportunistic. Customers, hey, can I go, solve this problem? And we were doing it for Snowflake and GCP and Azure and AWS. And, it was about, a few months back or 6 months ago where we started seeing that, customers are having this problem still, even though there are multiple solutions out there, whether they're small third-party vendors or from from Azure or from AWS, but nobody was doing this really well, quickly at the multi-cloud level. So that's why I tapped Mr. Sherb on the line here and said, hey, I think we should be thinking about this a bit differently, right? So, Jesse, can you take us home here and just walk us through the Looker point of view on solving this problem? And like Marco said, it doesn't have to be overly complex, right? Like, how do you get that quick win and then progress from there?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just wrap up with a couple slides here, and then we'll dive into a demo. But the goal, even going back to the Sky use case there, right? I think the lowest hanging fruit we can address out of the box is just providing that centralized visibility of your cloud cost, right? So if you're using multiple vendors, multiple providers, just being able to see that all in a centralized dashboard or centralized reports, again, that's going to help all of those different stakeholders involved speak the same language. It's also what's going to allow us to address things in real time, right? Like Marco said, not after the fact, not after you've gotten that invoice at the end of the month, of billing period, or whatever it may be. From there is when we can start to layer on some of that customization that's going to align with the nuances or requirements of your own organization. So, obviously, doing things like aligning to your business cost centers or to specific projects, as I had mentioned earlier, to really take the cost or the spend that we're incurring and be able to map them to business language, right, or a business unit. And then we can really start to layer on the optimization piece. So everything from those quick wins and being able to call out, here's an immediate cost saving by being able to do X, Y, Z, to, again, being able to do all of the proactive optimization that we had talked about, in the case of preventing somebody incurring that 20K, that 100K bill ahead of time. And so in this particular solution that I'm about to walk you through, there's 3 options or varieties of it that customers can implement. In option 1, and this is really what we consider to be the out-of-the-box option, this is addressing that low-hanging fruit. Let's just get all of this information on a centralized reporting view, on a centralized dashboard, right? From there, as we progress to option 2 and realize that these options are not mutually exclusive, right? They build on each other. So you can get started with option 1 on day 1, and then as your appetite or your requirements become more complex, you can start to append these latter options. So in option 2, we actually work with our customers on creating a data lake, centralizing the storage of all of our billing data so that we can get it into a uniform format, so that we can speak the same language across cloud provider, right? So each of these cloud providers, and I'm referencing public cloud providers in this case, have different nuances to how they bill and how you consume resources and on demand versus reserved, as well as they all have different similar SKUs, services. So we want to be able to answer basic questions like, how much did my team incur in cost last billing period on all services related to machine learning, right? So going through that mapping exercise of saying, hey, this service in GCP is the same thing or similar to this service in AWS, that allows us now to roll up our spend to some level of categorization, for example, like machine learning or data analytics or security. And then option 3, now we're really driving towards optimization. So working with customers on taking this information, aligning it to their cost centers, whether they're doing that through the use of tags or labels or project resource names, billing accounts, right? Making sure that we're providing a scalable and, more importantly, automated way of doing that mapping, so that all of this reporting can now exist at our cost center level or our lines of business. And once we're there, now we can start to unlock value in being able to do things like forecasting at the cost center level, being able to track against budgets at the cost center level, supporting showback, chargebacks, right? When there is that internal team that's managing that cost, and then showing that back to the individual lines of business. So, very quickly here, just to run through how each of these phases or options are architected. So as it's been mentioned on the call, Looker supports multi-cloud, meaning that in option 1, there is no data egress. There is really very minimal setup cost to get started. All you have to do is make sure that you have your billing data in a data warehouse in each respective public cloud. Looker is going to connect to each of those respectively and provide a centralized view across them. Like I had mentioned in option 2, we're going to work with you on egressing that data, centralizing it, and going through that data harmonization process so we can start to really analyze this information at a much more strategic level. And then lastly, completing that data harmonization, that alignment to your own lines of business and cost centers, then being able to apply that remaining feature set of forecasting, budget tracking, showbacks, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Jesse, as you do that, I had a question.
Yeah.
So how fast, can they get the visibility step 1 or option 1 or phase 1? How fast is that?
Yeah, like I mentioned, option 1 is very little prerequisite work. So, many organizations have already set up their billing exports into a data warehouse in each respective cloud. Once you've gone through that step, it's really a matter of days or less to get option 1 deployed.
Yeah, connect Looker and go.
That's right. Doug, if you could just confirm that you can see my screen now on your end.
You got a thumbs up.
All right, excellent. So as part of this solution, what you'll notice here is there's going to be different reporting sets, beginning with our multi-cloud reporting, which I'll take you through in a moment, which is going to look across all 3, in this case, the 3 major public clouds of GCP, AWS, and Azure. We'll then have specific reporting for each of those clouds. So for GCP, that's going to be our most robust set of reports. We have 10 different dashboards pertaining to ways that you can effectively manage your GCP spend. And then we also have some AWS and Azure content here as well. But if we start here with this multi-cloud summary, all right, what we're seeing is finally a single place where we can come and just say, how much did we spend across all of our clouds? In this case, over the last 90 days, right? We can adjust that. And then we can see what that breakout is amongst each respective cloud. We can get a sense of what this looks like on a rolling basis. We can tie in our own budgets, right? Whether that's daily budgets, monthly, weekly, etc. And also realize that all of this information could be looked at a macro level like we're looking at here. Or if I'm, the cost center owner for our marketing and sales team or our DevOps team, as I log in, I can see this information as it only pertains to my cost or my expenditures in my teams. Another thing I want to point out from a filtering view is this idea of service category. So this is something that tends to be net new for customers when I go through the solution is, again, being able to say, show me the same analysis for all services we're consuming related to ML or to storage, right? As we scroll down the page, we get to this breakdown section. And as simple as these charts look, the feedback I typically get when I'm doing a demo is, oh man, creating a chart like a stacked ranking of our most consumed services across cloud is taking somebody hours of manual Excel work to reconcile, when we get our invoices today. And so we start at the most macro level up here in the top left of service categories. What are the highest categories that we're spending on? Then down to the actual services. Then we'll go to the actual cost centers and which cost centers are incurring the most cost in this period, and then down to the individual project or resource level. If you're in Azure or AWS, project in GCP. And again, just being able to get a clean, centralized view across the 3 clouds. This also allows us to go into this areas to watch, right? So we talked a little bit about anomalous spend or trying to stay on top of, when certain expenditures start to get out of hand or increase at an anomalous rate. And so we can do this by product, we can do this by cost center or resource. And essentially what each of these bubbles represents, in this case, it's products we're consuming. The size of the bubble is how large of an expenditure that is for us. So this bubble here is showing GCP Compute Engine, about a $13 million a quarter expenditure for this fictitious company, right? And that cost is up 14% quarter over quarter. Perhaps something that we would want to investigate further, or at least monitor to make sure that that stays at a relatively stable level. And so we can, again, do this at the cost center level. We can even get down to our project and resource level. But Looker is very much designed to allow the end user, the business user, to further investigate this and ask questions of, well, what's going on? Why is this up 20? Why is DevOps up 21% quarter over quarter? And so any data point you see on any of these graphs, we can click on, and that's immediately going to filter the dashboard to allow us to just identify that particular cost. So in this case, we just want to look at our DevOps cost on GCP. We can see what that looks like over the last 90 days. We can see a breakdown of the services that were being consumed, of the particular projects in this case that were incurring those costs. We can get a daily view of this, right? And we can actually see that the spike occurred on the 15th. So again, we can drill down and just isolate that particular day if we wanted to. Some other things to note, right? In addition to being able to continually drill down and investigate these different data points, we also have the ability to set up alerts on any of these tiles. And so we can say, for example, well, if this ever exceeds, I don't know, $100,000, make sure that the call center owner or the central FinOps team is notified immediately upon going over budget or going over this threshold for that day. And because Looker sits directly on top of these data sources, all of this information is in real time, which means that these alerts are in real time. And then perhaps the most powerful way that you can interact with any dashboard on Looker, whether it's this solution or another use case of Looker, is the ability to what we call explore from here. And that allows us to really power our own self-exploration or ask our own questions of the data. And so, Doug, you had asked me a question earlier about how are different business users effectively managing their own spend with a tool like this? Well, here's a prime example of us being able to now go ask further questions of the costs that we're incurring in a governed way. So I know that the information I'm seeing here is the same information that FinOps is intending me to see, or that they've gone and defined for me. And so we can start to do things like, well, maybe we actually want to get a sense of what does this quarter over quarter spend look like? And we can go ahead and run that. And now we can get a sense of, okay, well, for each of these projects, we want to understand which projects within the DevOps cost center have had the biggest jump from last quarter to this quarter in terms of spend, right? I think I have this loaded here. And so, for example, we can see our project Janus was up almost 800K from one quarter to the next. So that really kind of was the bulk of that period over period increase, that anomalous spend that we saw in the original dashboard. So again, right now we can tie this project back to an initiative or to an individual user or team that might have consumed those services. And this was all a way to not only investigate what was going on, but be much more proactive before that 800K jump becomes a $3, $4, $5 million jump. Some other last things I'll cover, right? I had mentioned, as part of the solution, you'll also get cloud-specific reporting. So, very quick examples of that in GCP's case, you'll see things like your to-date spend, year-to-date, quarter-to-date, et cetera. You can do things like credit analysis and understand, how much credits are being applied towards your cost, what projects those credits are being applied to, how does that result in our net cost, and really just slice and dicing your expenditures in every which way possible. It also allows us to start to unlock things like that low-hanging optimization opportunity, right? So being able to come and see individual line items of saying, hey, this particular VM can be downsized. And here's going to be your cost savings as a result of doing that. And here's going to be your total cost savings as a result of doing all of these things. And so here's just another way how within each of these clouds we can start to leverage this tool to start to kind of almost spoon feed us some of the recommendations for those quick wins. As Sky, uncovered that 1.5 million, I believe Doug said in the first 6 months. And what I'll end on is, I'd say one of the main requirements that customers have asked me about is, again, going back to this dialogue between the central team who's managing these costs and the lines of business who are consuming these services and incurring these costs. And the process of, saying, okay, well, when we go to a cost center owner at the end of a billing cycle and we say, hey, Jane, your teams owe $500,000 for the last billing period. Jane often is $500,000 on what? What did we spend that on? And again, that's this very manual process of taking all of these invoices and getting it into Excel and reconciling that information just to show back that information to Jane to approve or to say, hey, something doesn't look right here. And so we've automated this process by creating a report that allows us to identify a particular cost center and provide an itemized breakdown of every single expenditure that cost center has incurred across the 3 public clouds in this particular, billing cycle. And now from here, this report can be automatically sent out to each respective cost center owner, at the end of each billing period, so that they can come into the tool, see the expenditures, they can explore from here and ask further questions of their expenditures, as we saw a moment ago. But we've also provided the ability to take these workflows outside of Looker. So as you'll see here, we can send data pretty much to any third-party application that you're working with. But one of those applications would be something like a Google Doc. And so we have this data action, as we call it, which is create chargeback invoice. And again, this can be set on a scheduled cadence. We can OAuth with our Google credentials. And what it will provide us, or provide the cost center owner, is a document that provides that same itemized breakdown of all of their costs. And we can drop this programmatically into a folder. We can email it out to each cost center owner at the end of each billing period. And now we're also creating a history, a documentation of all of this information as well. So I will pause there. And I know that we have some Q&A coming up, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll kick it back over to Doug. And let me know if you have any questions.
Yep, had to take myself off of mute. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for that. Good stuff. So if you have some questions you want to post them up, you can post them up. We'll take them. And then just from a resource standpoint, we're going to send this content out. You're going to have access to the blog and these other resources here.
Hey, Jesse and Doug, I don't know if I can ask a question. Am I okay to ask a question?
Of course.
All right. So I guess from where I'm sitting, tool looks interesting. My simple question would be, where do I start, right? Who do I contact and how do I get started?
Very good. So you can request, we got it here, you like teed it up for us. So to request a personal demo, you can hit looker.com.demo. For those folks who are working with the GCP teams, you can hit, and you know who they are, you can just talk to your sales rep and they'll point you to a Looker expert. Or you could email us at hello@looker.com.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, Marco, thanks for taking the time, the opportunity to kind of unpack and drill in and just, help us confirm the problem that we're seeing out there, which is really trying to grasp and get a handle on this this problem around cost management as it relates to cloud. Jesse, thanks for presenting. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, so I think we can wrap it up here. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good day.